So, hello then, welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spy Knight, and in these podcasts, I love talking about things, movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I am reviewing the live-action How to Train Your Dragon remake. So, let's get into it, shall we? How to Train Your Dragon, the live-action remake. So, in case you are unaware, this version of How to Train Your Dragon is a remake of the original animated film, which came out in 2010. That's right, the first How to Train Your Dragon animated movie came out in 2010. 15 years ago now. I remember when that film came out, and everybody in my school was raving about it, and I didn't care about watching it. I didn't like the title, like How to Train Your Dragon. Why do I need to know about how to train the dragon? I had no interest in the film whatsoever. But about 5 years ago, I saw it on Netflix, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm gonna give that a go. It's on Netflix. It's about 90 minutes long, and if it's not any good, it'll be over in 90 minutes. And then I remember about 10 minutes into watching the film on Netflix, watching the first animated film on Netflix, I was like, oh my god, how have I not seen this already? It felt like I was watching something truly special. And I absolutely I truly adore the original How to Train Your Dragon animated film. It's one of my favorite animated films of all time, and I'm also a big fan of the follow-ups How to Train Your Dragon 2 and How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. I haven't seen any of the animated stuff, any of the spin-off animated series they did, but I am aware of them. But I have seen the original How to Train Your Dragon animated film trilogy, and I'm a big fan of that trilogy. So I was excited about the remake. I was excited about the original How to Train Your Dragon being reimagined into live action, because I remember thinking to myself, this is way before this film was announced, like, I wonder if one day someone will try and do How to Train Your Dragon in the form of live action. I don't think that'll ever happen, but I wonder if one day they will. And now we're in 2025, and that is what has happened. The co-director, Dean Du Bois, of the original animated How to Train Your Dragon movie, has returned to solely direct this live-action remake, and Gerard Butler, who voiced the King of the Vikings and Hiccup's father in the original How to Train Your Dragon animated movie, he returns to play. He reprised his role as the Viking King and Hiccup's father. He reprised his role in live action in this film too. So you have some returning, cast and crew from the original movie, and you have a bunch of newcomers as well, including the likes of Nick Frost, Peter Serafinowicz is in there, which I had no idea was before seeing this movie, and a load of other famous people that you might not recognise by name. You'll probably recognise when you watch them in this film. If you saw them in a movie, you'd recognise them. They're those sort of actors, you know what I mean? And I was cautiously optimistic about this film, because I wanted it to be good so badly. I love the original How to Train Your Dragon animated movie so much. But how many great live-action remakes have we had? How many good live-action remakes have we had? I remember not minding. I thought it was okay. The Little Mermaid remake, which came out, was it a couple years ago now? Or was it last year? I can't remember. But I remember not minding that movie too much. But I also don't remember thinking it was great. And I kind of feel the same way. I kind of felt the same way about the Cinderella remake. Again, didn't mind it, but I didn't think it was great, And all the other live-action remakes are just remakes. Like, people say the Lion King remake is a live-action remake. It's not. There's no live-action element in that film. It's not like Jungle Book where you got the kid. There's no live-action element in the Lion King remake which came out in 2019. So, with all these remakes, for the most part, they don't turn out well. Sure, there's some exceptions, like the West Side Story remake is spectacular in my opinion, but that's one amongst how many other remakes that have not turned out well. So I had hopes, because you had Dean Du Bois, who co-directed the original How to Train Your Dragon, and I think solely directed the How to Train Your Dragon animated sequels as well, returning to direct this How to Train Your Dragon movie, the live-action How to Train Your Dragon film. And you had, the trailers look great. you had some really good trailers. I remember doing a trailer reaction for this film a good couple of months ago on this channel. At least it feels like a good couple of months ago now. And I remember getting really excited about the trailers. But again, I was cautious in my optimism because how many times we had a good live-action remake? How many times we had a good remake? The answer is not a lot. But I was hoping that this was going to be one of those cases where I was worried but pleasantly surprised. I was hoping this would finally be a good live action remake. So with those hopes, I went to go into the film at the cinema earlier today. And after coming back from the cinema, I hate to say it, actually, you know what? I'm happy to say it. I thought this was a wonderful film. I really enjoyed this movie. It's not without its flaws, okay? And it's not as good as the original animated film. No, it isn't. But there's something about it. I'm not sure if I can quite put my finger on it, but there's something about this film when I was watching it, and I was just swept up by it. I mean, the film starts off a bit shaky, and I was like, oh, this is okay, this is alright, but it's not great, it's not grabbing me. And then as the film went on, I had this odd experience, but this good experience at the same time, where I was watching the film, and it just got better and better, and it grew on me the more it went on, and I ended up having this wonderful cinema experience with this film. I do think this is the sort of film you should watch in the cinema. I feel if you watch it from the comfort of your own home, on a streaming service when it finally comes onto a streaming service, or on DVD, if you still use DVDs, I don't know how many people still do, but you get the point I'm making. If you watch it from your own home, I don't think you'll have the same effect. But because I watched it in a cinema, those scenes where Toothless and it's flying with Hiccup, there's something about where I was like, wow. Just the way they shot that, and the way they shot some of the Toothless sequences and some of the dragon sequences, I was kind of amazed by, and I ended up kind of loving this film. I'm saying kind of there because I didn't love this film the same way I say I loved The Ballad of Wallace Island, which I reviewed last week on this channel, or the same way I loved, there was another film that I loved earlier this year, I can't remember actually. Well, maybe that's not a good case if I can't remember, but you get the point I'm making. I don't love this film as much as I have loved other movies I've reviewed on this channel in the past, but I loved it in the sense that I was watching it and I was reminded why I enjoyed the original film so much. You know, I haven't seen the original animated How to Train Your Dragon for about a year or two now, and I'm terrible at remembering movies. I'm really not that good, unless it's something like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which I've seen about 1 billion times, or Empire Strikes Back, which I've seen about 1 billion times. I can't really remember films too well, and I've only seen the original animated How to Train Your Dragon movie about 4 or 5 times. But I haven't seen it in a good couple of years, and now I want to go back and rewatch it. And I think that's what a good, and I mean a good, live-action remake should do. It should make you want to go back and revisit the original animated film. I remember after watching the West Side Story remake, I wanted to go back and rewatch the original West Side Story, and that's what I did. And I think I kind of got the same feeling coming out of this film. I wanted to go back and rewatch the original How to Train Your Dragon film. First of all, to see how they compare, but also to get back those feels like I did the first time I watched the animated film, because I had those feels again whilst watching the live action remake. There was that magical feel coming off the screen that I have missed in so many films, well, over the past couple of years, and so many remakes at that. You know, so many times with live action remakes, it loses a heart, it loses the magic of the original animated version, of the original version, full stop. But in the case of the How to Train Your Dragon remake, it's got that heart in there. It's got that magic in there that you had in the original film. And it's still got those same themes of friendship, those themes of loyalty, those themes of companionship, that father-son relationship, which is the centre of this film, and that relationship between a boy and his best friend, should I say, becomes a man as the film goes on, and the films go on. And apparently a sequel to this live action How to Train Your Dragon has already been greenlit, which is great. I'm really excited about that, by the way. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, it has those themes about friendship, loyalty, love, and all that jazz. The theme that, in the words of the Beatles, all you need is love, which is still present in this film, which still shine through. They don't shine through as much as they did in the original film, but they still shine through. And I think it helps they have Dean Du Bois, who was a co-director on the original How to Train Your Dragon movie, and I think solely directed the How to Train Your Dragon animated sequels, solely directing this film, because it felt like he knew this world. It felt like he knew what he wanted to do. He felt like he knew how he wanted to adapt it to a live action reimagining, and I think he did that splendidly. I don't know why I used the word splendidly there. I don't know where that came from, but I did nevertheless. I really liked the way this world looked, and I liked how so much of it wasn't, it didn't just have the backdrop of CGI. A lot of the times in the film, I mean, not all the time, there's clearly some backdrops where there's clearly some moments where the backdrop of a scene was CGI. But there were so many moments in the film I was like, oh wow, they're shooting on real location, and that's such a wonderful change from so many movies nowadays where it's like, okay, yeah, you're shooting this on a green screen, you're shooting this on a blue screen, you're shooting this in a closed set, so you can't have paparazzi or whatever trying to photograph what's going on the set. Whilst with this film, they were shooting on location in so many sequences, and I just think it brought the film to life more. I think that's something films need to do more to bring their films to life and to bring that immersion to life as well, because the thing is about the How to Train Your Dragon movies, they've got dragons in, they're fantasy films, and you want them to be immersive. And the thing is, because this film was shot on real locations, and because the performances were all believable, I thought everybody did a wonderful job in the film. For me, the standout was probably Nico Parker's Astrid, but I did think, what's his name here? Forgot off the top of my head. Mason Thames as Hiccup was great, and Gerard Butler. I love seeing Gerard Butler back. I mean, Gerard Butler is chewing up the scenery in the role he is playing as the Viking King, the father of Hiccup. But it just works, and the scenes between Gerard Butler and Nick Frost are so funny to watch. And Nick Frost is great in the film as well. I mean, I've loved Nick Frost ever since I saw him in Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End, the Cornetto trilogy. And so, seeing him in this film, I didn't know he was in it, really. I mean, I heard somewhere that he was in this film, but I don't remember watching him in the trailers, and then I saw him in this movie and I was like, oh god, it's Nick Frost, and I love him in this role. But what was his name for? I think I've lost my train of thought. It was something like, all the performances were believable, everyone was wonderful in the film, and I think that's what I'm trying to say here, that's what helped bring the film to life more. The scenery, the settings, and the performances just made this film feel more immersive and more real. I actually believe that Burke was a place and that dragons were flying around it. And that's not to say that I don't have criticisms with this film. I do think that some of the CGI should have been more polished up. I think there's a problem with modern day CGI, and I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But some of the CGI in the film was really, really good. I was like, okay, I totally toothless in the scene. But then there's some moments with the CGI with other dragons where I was like, okay, I can tell this is CGI, and I would much prefer if I couldn't. And I think maybe some of the CGI needed a bit more polish here and there. And the film is 20 minutes longer than the original animated film, and I think you can tell that. I think it should have been more tighter. There's some parts where it's slightly baggy, which I didn't love. And there's some parts where it did feel like maybe Dean Du Bois had a little much too creative control, like DreamWorks, which the production studio behind this movie, and Universal, I think, yeah, they're the production studio behind this film as well. They just let Dean Du Bois do what he wanted with this film, and I think maybe they should have reined it in a bit. Like, going back to what I was saying, it's a bit baggy here and there, and I think it could have been tightened. The opening of the film isn't great. When you watch this film, if you were like me and you were watching the opening thinking, oh god, I hope the rest of the film isn't like this, then you'll be okay, because the rest of the film isn't like the opening. The opening is fine. It's not terrible. It's just not that good. I remember watching the opening to the original How to Train Your Dragon movie and thinking, oh wow, this is really spectacular. And then I was watching the opening to this one thinking, okay, this almost feels like a sort of student-produced version of that original film. But then you, as a film progresses, the film grows on you. That's the thing. I love films that grow on you the more they progress, and this is one of those films. It does lack creativity in some parts, and I would have liked it to do more different things than the original film. Like, I would have liked there to be more change in the adaptation. I might be wrong here, but I did think there was one storyline added in with one of the side characters, which I liked because it fleshed out that side character a bit more. But I might be wrong there. I can't remember. Again, I haven't seen the original in a couple of years, so I might be wrong. But I did feel like there was a added storyline in there, which did serve a purpose, and I did like. But I feel this film lacked a little bit of creativity. I'm not saying there's no creativity in there, because there is. The way they shoot this for live action, the way they adapt things is creative, but I just would have liked there to be more creativity, maybe add in something that wasn't in the original animated version, because you can do it in the animated version and you can do it in live action. And I'm hoping that when we get to the live action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon 2, we do get that. That being said, there is still creativity in this film. I just wanted there to be more. But with that being said, it's still got that magical feel you want from this film. It's still got that magical feel you got from the original How to Train Your Dragon movie, and you get that again here. And I think that's also because of the John Powell musical score. John Powell, who did the musical scores to the 3 How to Train Your Dragon animated films, the How to Train Your Dragon animated trilogy, which is a better way of saying that, returns to do the score for this film. And I was a bit wary of that. I was like, okay, is he just going to copy the same themes he had in the original film? And he does. He reuses many of the same themes, but he also dates them. And I can't really explain that more until, I can't really explain that without somebody watching the film, but you'll know what I mean when you watch the film and you listen to the music, as I do when I watch a film. I'm listening to the music, I'm watching the film, I'm looking at how everything's shot, and I'm listening to the music quite a bit because I'm quite a musical person. I love my musical scores, and I love the score to the original animated How to Train Your Dragon film, and so I was listening to the score to this film quite a bit, and I was like, I like how he's adapting the score, I like how he's updating it. And that's the thing about this film overall. It's going to introduce the How to Train Your Dragon story to a new generation of people. People forget. I forgot before I did this review today. When I was doing a bit of research just before I did this review, I was like, oh my god, the original animated How to Train Your Dragon film came out in 2010. And it didn't feel like it came out that long ago, but it did. And people forget that. And so this film coming out now, although it feels quite soon after, the original came out, it's not. It's 15 years after, so it makes sense that they want to introduce the How to Train Your Dragon story to a new generation of people, and you know what? They will. I love animated movies, but not everybody does. Some people prefer live action films, and I must admit, I'm probably one of those people. I love an animated movie, I do. One of my favourite films of all time is Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which is an animated film. That being said, if I got the choice, I'd probably watch a live action film over an animated movie, and I think there's a lot of people who also share that similar thought process to me. And so what this film is going to do is introduce the story of How to Train Your Dragon to a new generation of people who perhaps didn't watch the original animated version, and to a new generation of kids who are now going to grow up with the How to Train Your Dragon, with this version of How to Train Your Dragon. And I love that. My brother, who is older than me, he had no interest in watching the animated version of How to Train Your Dragon, and then he saw the trailer for this from when he went to go watch Mission Impossible a couple of weeks back, and he said, okay, I want to see this film because I am more interested in live action. I think there are going to be a lot of people who are like that. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, I'm just saying that's how it is for a lot of people. At least that's the way I see it anyway. And now we're going to get this new generation of people who grow up with How to Train Your Dragon, who get back into the world of How to Train Your Dragon because of this live action movie, because it's good, and because it feels like we finally have, and I mean finally have, a good live action remake. It's not without its flaws. I'm not saying it's as good as the original animated film. I'm not saying that. But it works, it works. The flying sequences make you feel like you're flying. The relationships work well. The heart of the film, which is a relationship between Hiccup and Toothless, just works wonderfully, and I mean wonderfully with a capital W, and the relationship between Hiccup and Astrid also works, and you get engaged in that. You get engaged in the relationship between Hiccup and his father. That also shines through. The relationship between Hiccup and Nick Frost's character. You know, all the relationships work. All the character dynamics feel like they should do, and the world building is good enough, and it feels like they can also expand in it for the sequels to come, which are apparently happening. And yeah, I was watching this film and I was smiling and I was thinking, you know what, this is a lot better than it has any right to be. A lot better than a lot of live action remakes that I've seen. Again, not without its flaws, and it doesn't have the same magic as the original, but it does have that magic in there. Whether it's through the John Powell musical score, the performances, the world building, the way it's shot, or just those scenes between Hiccup and Toothless which grab your heart and make you smile. This is a worthy live action remake, in my opinion, that I think does justice to the original and is faithful to the original. Maybe a little too faithful at that, but is faithful nonetheless. And is going to introduce a lot of new people to the How to Train Your Dragon movie, to the How to Train Your Dragon world. And I, for one, do not think that is a bad thing. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that the live action How to Train Your Dragon remake, I'm going to say that it's I'm going to say it's an 8 out of 10. I am surprised to give it that rating. You know, I came out of cinema thinking I was going to give this film a 7.5 out of 10. But the reality is, the more I talk about the film and the more I think about it, the more I like it, the more I want to go back and rewatch it. I may feel differently about when I rewatch it. Everyone's allowed to change their opinion. But there was something about this movie, like I said earlier in this review, it reminded me of how much I loved the original movie in the first place. You know, sometimes people say that with a remake. They say, "Oh, I was reminded about how much I loved the original movie, and I was reminded of how much I would much rather be watching the original film." But I didn't get that with this film. I was reminded of how much I loved the original animated movie, and then I was also taken by how they were updating the film, how they were adapting it for live action, and the way they were doing that, I was taken by. And yeah, I think that's ultimately why it worked for me. I was immersed into the film. I, at no one point, felt like my mind was wandering elsewhere, like you sometimes get with movies, and that I've often had with a lot of live action films. At no point was I unengaged in the film. I was engaged in it, I was smiling, I was laughing along with it, with the jokes, and I was swept up by this film. I was swept up by the central relationship, all the other relationships throughout the movie, and the way it was shot, and the flying sequences, and just, it really works as a live action remake, you know? And it finally feels like we have a good live action remake. I know I said the Little Mermaid remake and the Cinderella remakes were good, but I do prefer this one, because it feels like heart was put into it. It feels like the people behind this movie really wanted to do justice to remaking the story to a live action version. You know what? I think they did that. I think they did just that. I think that this film is... I think it's wonderful. And I think it's so enjoyable. And I love that now it's going to introduce a lot of new people to the world of How to Train Your Dragon. And I'm very excited about that as well. You know? I think this is what a good remake should be. And that is ultimately why I liked the How to Train Your Dragon live action remake. And so, all in all, as what he said, as I'm going to say once more in this podcast today, the live action How to Train Your Dragon remake is an 8 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen the live-action How to Train Your Dragon remake, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts and many more videos coming very, very soon on this channel. As what he said, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.